everyone, Miles here. Hope you're okay. Thanks for tuning into this Q&A special today, where I'm going to be answering a load of the questions that you guys asked me on my Instagram. If you're not following that, by the way, I'll leave a link in the description. And if you're new around here, please consider subscribing and liking this video if you're enjoying the content. If you don't know who I am, I'm a film photographer and I specialize in shooting sporting events on film across the world. Do all sorts of stuff in the sporting world, some music as well, but I generally am just a film photographer, and hopefully some of my photos are worthy of a follow, but you're the judge of that. Anyway, I asked on my Instagram story a little while ago for people to get in touch with their questions for me to answer in this video, so hopefully I'll be able to answer any questions you guys might have about how to make film photography a bit of a career, how I go about getting, the press passes to be on the touchlines at games and all that sort of thing, and some of the techniques that I use to get photos whilst I'm shooting sporting games. So, without further ado, let's get to answering some questions. Okay, so first question from Kieran. How did I originally get into shooting sports on film? So I started shooting film really sort of, I suppose, properly in lockdown, actually, to be fair. I worked in the music industry for years before I started shooting film properly, I suppose. And obviously when the pandemic hit, I was furloughed, as most of the world was at that point, I think. And so the music industry just ground to a complete halt. So I kind of used that to really delve back into film photography as a passion. I hadn't really done it since I was in school. So I found an old film camera on Facebook Marketplace. It was an Olympus OM10 for you nerds out there like me, and I bought some film for it online and just started shooting film just around my local area, wandering into the woods and shooting some film, going out for walks with the dog and shooting film whilst I was doing it, and I just fell completely in love with the whole medium. And so that's how I started in terms of shooting film itself. Shooting sports on film kind of came naturally because I'm a big sports fan. Sports and photography are my two real passions, to be honest. So I go to a lot of sports games, particularly football games as a fan. Me and my younger brother do this thing where we go to somewhere in Europe a couple times a year to go watch a football game, and he shoots film as well. So we'd always take film cameras with us into the crowd, and I'd shoot some stuff from the stands. A lot of the time there, though, you're not allowed to bring like professional cameras in, so it'd just be on a little point and shoot or whatever. But I kept shooting stuff there and posting the results on my social media, and luckily it all just started to gain a bit of traction. For whatever reason, I guess everybody was bored whilst they were furloughed like me. And so that kind of just started snowballing, and I eventually got asked to shoot a game by Fulham in London, which was the first ever sports team to officially ask me to shoot a game. And so through all that, I actually got asked to cover a game for the Six Nations, which is rugby. So for the England team, I went to shoot England versus Italy at Twickenham. And that was really early on in terms of my film photography life, I suppose. And things just kind of started to snowball from there. The first football team I worked for were Fulham, who asked me to shoot a game for them on the touchline. And that was really the moment where everything changed, because I was an accredited photographer on the touchline at a Premier League game. And I just felt when I was there at Craven Cottage shooting this game that this is the start of something, possibly. Luckily, also after that, we collaborated on the results on social media. So me and Fulham, the post appeared on both of our pages, and it did really well. It got like 15 million views or something, and that was the moment that really changed everything. And from there, clubs started reaching out. My account just kept on growing and growing, and I'd work with more clubs and in more sports, and it all just snowballed from there, really, which was very lucky. And I am forever thankful to Fulham and to a guy called Jamie Marriott, whose Instagram handle is @football35mm, because he was the one who originally invited me to a Fulham game just to watch from the stands. And that was where they saw my work and invited me back officially to shoot a game. So that was my kind of pathway through. This goes along with a lot of the other questions I've got on my Instagram story, which is like, how do you get into the sports photography world? And I will say that my route in was very unconventional, because a lot of the time, I think the conventional route in is that you start shooting at your local club, possibly, just shooting some bits and pieces for them. They start to enjoy your work and you gradually work your way up. Then, you just sort of work your way up the ladder, I suppose. But for me, I kind of circumnavigated all that because of my social media following, which was very lucky because obviously not everybody does that. But I think it's a lesson in just putting yourself out there. I just put my work out there. I just whacked it on social media. Didn't really think about it. Obviously, I was thinking it would be great if it went viral or if it took off or whatever. But it just took on a life of its own. And that would never have happened if I hadn't just put myself out there and just decided, you know what, I'm just going to shoot this content. I love doing it. That was the main thing as well. I really enjoy it, and I'd be doing it anyway, you know, if I wasn't doing it for a career now. And luckily it all just came across, I guess. And, you know, through social media, it's amazing what you can do on socials, because, you know, even at a lower level, you can start, you know, if you shoot some stuff at some games locally to you in you know, like the lower leagues, there's no harm in sending a DM to a club near you and just saying, hey, do you want me to come along and shoot some stuff for you? Or even DMing a player and saying, hey, do you want some photos of you from the game this weekend, and they can get you in that way. So it's always about reaching out, it's about putting yourself out there. The worst that can happen is people will just say no, and you're back in the same place that you were anyway. So there's no harm in just going for it, for me. And that's kind of where it all happened for me with social media. Actually getting the accreditation to the games, obviously, is, you know, once you're in there. So like when I did the game, first of all, for Fulham, they sent me a sort of accreditation sign-in thing where you have to enter your details and then you pick up the accreditation on your way into the stadium. In other sports and other competitions, there are portals which you have to be a member of to be able to access accreditation and things like that. But most of the time, there's a way around it. And, you know, if you have the opportunity, you know, some footballer sees a post of yours and likes it, and you DM them, and, you know, they open up a conversation. There's absolutely no harm in just saying, you know, if you ever want me to come to a game and shoot some stuff, just let me know. Because the worst they can do is say no or just ignore you, and then, you know, you're back where you started. So that would be my advice. Somebody's asked me which app I use for editing my reels, and I use an app on my phone called Splice. Just always really liked it. How do I manage to find focus so quickly when I'm using manual focus cameras? That is just literally practice, to be honest with you. It's just about knowing the camera, knowing the gear, knowing the sport, being able to react quickly. And it just comes naturally after a while once you've used it for so long, basically. So they say practice makes perfect. This is a good one from Focal Matter, who's actually asked this twice. Which stadium had the best toilets? That is a good question, and, you know, it's a very important one too, because, yeah, the toilet facilities do make or break a stadium in a lot of cases. I think the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium had pretty nice toilets, again, because that's basically a brand new stadium. That seems to ring some bells, but obviously with me, I'm quite lucky in that I don't often have to use the toilets in the stands, because I'll be in the media room and that sort of thing, and there's normally some toilets in the sort of innards of the stadium. But Tottenham Hotspur, I think, seems to ring a bell as being particularly nice. Someone's asked, where am I from? I am from Oxfordshire in the UK, in the countryside. Clodwig Franz, good username, has asked me what it meant for me to meet Eric Cantona. It was amazing, very surreal. You know, when you meet somebody that's that much of a legend. He was a legend though, like in terms of the way he just was as a person. He was so chilled. But, you know, when I got that email to say, you know, we want you to work on a shoot with Eric Cantona, I was just like, holy shit, this is unbelievable. So it was incredible. I mean, like, it's the stuff dreams are made of, really. It's like a bucket list thing, you know, as a photographer and a United fan. It doesn't really get much better than working with Eric Cantona, to be honest. So yeah, it was fabulous. It meant the world. It was also nice in a funny way, professionally, you know, to be trusted with doing a shoot of that magnitude. It just meant everything. I freaking loved it. Somebody here said, what's the deal with Clickasnap film? That is a good question. As you can see, I've got loads of it in my fridge right here. And that's because they sent me loads, basically. And it's for sale, actually, on my website right now, which is why I have so much of it. You can buy it, again, link in the description for it. What it is, basically, it's essentially CineStill. So it's Kodak Cinefilm with the remjet layer removed, which is exactly what CineStill is. So you know the Orbi halation that you get from CineStill, that's exactly what you get with these films here. So if I'll grab one out the fridge. So this is Clickasnap 800. In this box here, and this is literally CineStill. I don't know what more to say other than that, but it responds exactly like CineStill. The results look exactly like CineStill. That's how the canister looks, like this, and you can see the film's got that like purple tinge to it, which CineStill has too. So yeah, if you like that sort of vibe, this is a very good cheap option as opposed to buying the proper CineStill stuff. So yeah, if you want some of this, again, link in my description to my website. A question here saying, how do I get brands or companies to accept film rather than digital? So I think with me, my whole content strategy, if that is a word, I'll put it in inverted commas, is to shoot with film. it's the real stuff. It's not a digital photo with grain applied to it. I genuinely go to these games and shoot film. And so I guess because that comes across in my work so much, I never get asked to shoot digital because they know that I'm that guy who shoots the football on film. So it's weird in a way. I never get that question asked to me, whether I can come and shoot digital, because it's just my thing. I shoot film at sports games. So I think if you become known for that, then you don't have to push for getting film accepted with brands because they just know that's what you do. You shoot on film. And so in my case, that's how it works for me. How did I start to commercialize myself and my work? So I'm going to cover this in another video actually coming out soon, where I talk about how I made film photography my career in 2024. So keep an eye out for that video coming soon. But in short, once my stuff started to get traction online, it meant that I could start to ask for fees from people. Now, obviously, in the early stages, so there were a couple of games I did, like I shot a game for Oxford United, who at the time were in League One, and I didn't get paid for that. And there's stuff at the very beginning that you're going to have to do without getting paid. It's unfortunately just the way it works. In pretty much every creative industry, you have to put some groundwork in for free, because the trouble is with creative stuff is that people enjoy doing it so much that they don't mind doing it for free because it's a passion and they just love it. And so that kind of drives everything down for everybody else, but it's fine. And it's a great way to get experience as well, especially at the start when maybe you're not as confident as you might be to charge for stuff. Doing stuff for free to begin with is great. For me, obviously, I was lucky with my social media stuff that it grew so quick that I offer a 2-tier thing to clients now, where I am a photographer and I can shoot film at a game for them and provide them with the photos, but on the other side of that, I also provide them with social media reach, and I've kind of got that influencer side to me too. So that really helps me in a lot of situations, because although I take photos that I like to think are good, I mean obviously it's completely subjective, but I take these photos on film, that maybe by itself wouldn't necessarily be enough, but the fact that I also create the content around it, and there's that social media side to things too, I think really helps, because it means that if you've got a club or if you've got a competition with a marketing budget and they want to create some content that's a little bit unique and a little bit different to the norm, if there's a film photographer who's going to come along and shoot some film photos, but also you're going to get some reach on socials because of it at the same time, it's like a double-edged sword. And so I think that helps me then when I approach clubs, I then send them, or a lot of the time if a club approaches me, we'll have a back and forth and I'll send them a document on email that has package options for them, basically, that says I can come in, I can just shoot you some photos, provide you with photos for this much, or it can go all the way up to shooting multiple reels, loads of rolls of film. We'll collaborate on socials and everything on the results afterwards, and you can use the photos for what you'd like, and that's this much. And so that's great because you can tier then the packages to people as well. And so having that kind of portfolio deck, like rate sheet PDF that I send to brands, is a really good idea as well. And that's a great thing to have as you start to work up a bit of a portfolio, is to have a really nice swish looking sort of document that has all of your best work on it and how much your packages might be. Potentially if you're going through the social media route as well, then you can include your engagement figures and your following and your demographics and all that sort of stuff as well. So that's really important to send out to brands so that they know from the start how much things might cost. And often, a club will come back and say, oh, that's actually a bit outside of our budget. And at that point you can say, especially if it's something that you really want to do, then you can say, okay, that's fine, let's come to some sort of an agreement and we can figure out something that works for both parties. So that's a good thing to have as well, is that kind of portfolio document that you can start to send brands, clients and clubs to say, here's my work, here's what I charge, let's see if we can make something happen. DWit7 asks, what is my favorite film stock to shoot and why? I'm going to divide this into two, because I'm going to go black and white and color. Color film, I just don't think you can beat Kodak Portrait 800. You just can't, especially for sports stuff. So with sport, you want to be using film that's high ISO so that you can get those nice fast shutter speeds, particularly when you're shooting games at night. And obviously 800, unfortunately, is the maximum ISO that color film is these days. I'm hoping that might change, but you never know. And I just think the best of the best in terms of color film is Portrait 800. It is the most expensive though, by quite a long way. So if you're not going to go in at the very top, and actually nowadays I don't actually use it that much for shoots, just for the simple fact that it is so expensive. There are cheaper options you can get, and right now my favorite kind of more budget 800 ISO color film is a film called Flick Film Aurora 800, And I've used that quite a lot. And I've heard online that it's actually re-rolled films from old Kodak disposable cameras that were 800 ISO. So they're a bit cheaper, but I love them. It's 800 ISO color film. I think it looks great. So budget option, Aurora 800, premium option, Portrait 800. In terms of black and white, my go-to for all sport stuff is Ilford Delta 3200, just because you can absolutely rely on it. I shoot it at 3200 as well. And so it means that any situation, any lighting situation, you know you're sorted. Obviously, if it's really bright, then it can be a bit grainy for the day. So if it's, you know, an afternoon game outside and it's really sunny, I might change that to another Ilford film like HP5 or Delta 400, which are both 400 ISO. But, you know, if you want to go into a situation anywhere, any stadium, any time, whatever you're doing, and you want a color film and a black and white film that you know is going to get you results, whatever happens, have some sort of 800 ISO color film, whether that's Aurora, whether that's Lomography 800, whether that's Portrait 800, and Ilford Delta 3200 is just my favorite black and white film, because you know, even in really low light situations, you can absolutely get the most out of every bit of light. The only thing is, the flip side to that is it's very grainy, but actually, I think that's a bit of a benefit these days, because honestly, I think that's what people are after with film photos right now, to make it look even more vintage. So yeah, Ilford Delta 3200 for black and white, Kodak Portrait 800 for color would be my two favorites. This is a good and topical question these days. How can I not go bankrupt while shooting film? That is unfortunately the thing now for people trying to get into film, is how expensive it is. What I would say is to start with, shoot some more budget black and white film. If you don't want color, or if you don't need it, you can get some really lovely results out of some black and white film. Kentmere, I think, is a great black and white film. And honestly, I've used it on professional shoots quite a lot. And you can pick them up for like £4 or £5 a roll in the UK sometimes, which is incredible. The developing then is another side of things that might add some expense. So I always try and use a lab that I know is going to guarantee results for a good price. I actually, on that, have a bit of an association with Analog Wonderland, who, in terms of labs in the UK, are my very favorite. They do all of my professional stuff and I love them. And if you click the link in my description of this video, it'll take you to Analog Wonderland, where you can shop there. They often have deals on with film processing and scanning. I'd definitely recommend going to somewhere like that rather than a high street shop. Here in the UK, Snappy Snaps is one of those, and I've had some great experiences with Snappy Snaps, but I've also had some terrible experiences with Snappy Snaps. And that's because they're all run like a franchise, so each shop is kind of completely different to the next, so the quality is different, the staff might not be as well trained from one to the next, and also the price is very crazily. Like, I remember in London, I had to get something developed same day, and I paid like £27, I think, to develop a roll of film there. And then recently I had a similar thing where I had to get something done really quickly, and I went to the Snappy Snaps close to me in Oxford, and it was £13 to get it developed and scanned. So there's a wide range of like quality and cost when you go to high street stores. So I would say go to a good lab, see if they can do you a deal. The other option as well is that you start to develop and scan film at home, but the problem with that is there's more room for error, and also there is a bit of an expense at the start. You know, you've got to invest a few £100 probably to get yourself up and running. But in the long run, that saves you money. The more film you develop and scan at home, obviously, the more you save per roll. So if you can, you know, you want to get yourself some chemicals and a cheeky little scanning setup at home, you can develop and scan at home. Again, if you want some really nice scanning stuff, there's links in the description of this video to a company called Valoy, who make amazing scanning products at home. But otherwise, yeah, finding yourself a good film lab can get you a good price. Someone said they're really interested in this film from AliExpress. And actually, so again, I posted this on my Instagram the other day. I have bought some film from AliExpress that cost £1.20. It's in this bag. It just arrived today, and I'm going to take it to a game and test it out against a much more expensive film to see how it fares. So keep an eye out for that video coming soon, the AliExpress £1.20 film. I'm looking forward to using that. My favorite camera brand. I mean, I've always been a Canon boy. For some reason, I don't even really know why, but I absolutely love the film cameras that I use that are Canon. So I use my Canon EOS 1V loads for shooting sport, and also my Canon F1s. And I just think the glass you can get with them is just so beautiful. I've always just got on with the ergonomics of Canon cameras for some reason, so I'd say those. For digital these days, I use a Sony, so I'm filming this right now on my Sony a7C II, which I absolutely love as well. It's got that vintage look to it, but really, really crisp 4K. It's a lovely camera to use and very compact as well. So I'd say digital-wise, I go Sony. Film-wise, I would go Canon. How do I meter for film, especially in sport where everything is so fast? Now, I use a rule that actually you can use in all film photography, to be honest, and that is expose for the shadows. It's the complete opposite with film to digital. With film, you're always better overexposing than you are underexposing, whereas with digital, it's the other way around. So with film, what I would normally do, so if I'm at a game, I do trust the inbuilt meters on my cameras most of the time, but I also have an app on my phone that's just a light meter that you can point to wherever you want, and it tells you the settings you need to use. But what I would do at the start of a game is I'll load in my film to my Canon F1 or whatever. Let's say I'm loading in some Portrait 800, and I would point the camera to the turf, because that tends to be the darkest place that you're going to be focusing on during the game. Point it to the turf where it's in the shadows, and whatever settings it's recommending you there, I always just go a little bit below what is being recommended. So that, you know, if there's change in light, it means that you've got that little bit of extra exposure. So I always try and keep the shutter speeds at football to a 500th of a second or above if possible, which means you've got to use some nice fast lenses for that. So a lot of the time I'm using a 70 to 200 f2.8, so the lens would be wide open at 2.8 most of the time. But it depends how, you know, what sort of time of day you're shooting and that sort of thing. But so yeah, I'd point my camera at the turf, I'd set the shutter speed to a 500th, and then I'd see how much scope I've got with the aperture at that point. Sometimes if it is too dark and I'm still like the lens is wide open and it's still saying I need a bit more exposure, then you might just tease the shutter speed down, but you want to avoid doing that because you're going to start to get motion blur at that point. So yeah, but in general, expose for the shadows in film photography. So point your camera at the shadows or point your light meter at the shadows, and whichever settings it's telling you there, use those. And if you have the scope to, if you're using a nice high ISO film, with the aperture of the camera, if you've got enough range for it, just open it up another click or two, and that way you'll guarantee some good exposure. And like I say, overexposing film is much, much better than underexposing it. Here's a good one, and not maybe related to photography in any way, but my top 5 Man Utd players. Oh my God. Okay, so I was born in 1992. So, I mean, you can see one of them behind me right there. Eric Cantona has got to be up there. I was always a huge fan of Ruud van Nistelrooy growing up. He was always my favorite player. I had loads of shirts with Ruud on the back of. So I'd say Van Nistelrooy, probably. I mean, Ronaldo, I think, has to be in there. I'm trying to think of other players who I've really liked over the years. Chicharito was one of my favorite players when he was there, Javier Hernandez. I always thought he was a fabulous goal scorer, and I think he was a bit mistreated, to be honest, after Fergie retired, because I think he didn't get as much game time as he deserved after that. And then the final one for me, I always really liked Ole Gunnar Solskjaer as well. The first ever goal I saw live at Old Trafford was scored by Ole, and I saw him score a few times at Old Trafford actually, but just always loved him. Always just did what he needed to do for the team, came off the bench, scored important goals, lovely guy. I really liked him as a manager as well. And again, I think he was a bit unfairly treated, to be honest, because I think of all the managers we've had since Fergie, with the possible exception of Ten Hag, now he's won a couple of trophies, I think the football we played under Ole was the best since Fergie, and it kind of brought a little bit of the old United back. So yeah, so was that 5? So Cantona, Van Nistelrooy, Chicharito, Solskjaer, and Ronaldo. There's my 5. Any good advice on buying expired film? Heard that expired black and white is safer. Is that right? Yes, it is. So if you're buying expired film, again, like I mentioned earlier, it's always best to overexpose film as opposed to underexpose it. And with expired film, you need to overexpose it quite a lot. And that kind of roughly depends on when it expired as well. So one of the things I'd look for when you're buying expired film is that it didn't expire absolutely ages ago. So like some point in the last 20 or 30 years is a good start. Yes, black and white negative film always holds up the best, then followed by color negative film. And then I found that slide film is just a complete lottery. Some of it can be good, some of it can be total shite. So yeah, if you want to get into shooting expired film, expired black and white, a lot of the time can just look like it was fresh, to be honest. But expired color negative film, you know, I've shot some stuff that goes way back to the 70s and, you know, still got some good stuff out of it. But, you know, if you find some expired color film from like the early 2000s and the 90s, most of the time, you'll be good. Just make sure to overexpose it. All right, this is a good technical question. Ideal shutter speeds, apertures, film stocks, and lens length for different situations. Okay, so what I tend to do is have multiple camera bodies with me at a game with lenses on that cover the entire range of focal length, basically. So I normally have at least 3 SLR camera bodies with me, one with a wider lens on. So sometimes I go as wide as 17mm to get a big wider stadium, but often it's like a 24-70 on there. Then my Canon EOS 1V is the one that I use the most, and that's got a 70-200 on there. And then my other F1 normally has a really big telephoto, like a 300 or a 600mm on there. And then between those 3 cameras, you've kind of got everything covered. So like if the action comes close to you, you just switch to the camera with the 24-70 on. If it's further away at the other end of the pitch, you switch to the one with the 600 on, and anywhere in between, the 70-200 is great. In terms of shutter speeds, apertures, and film stocks, like I've mentioned, you want to get the higher ISO film if possible. And then in terms of other settings, shutter speed is by far the most important when you're shooting sports on film, because if the shutter speed's too slow, because football and everything, it moves so fast, you're going to get a lot of motion blur, which you don't want. Sometimes if you do it intentionally, it can look quite cool, but most of the time you want nice, crisp, sharp images of somebody kicking a ball, somebody serving it in tennis or whatever it is. So shutter speed is always the most important setting for me, and having a high ISO film enables you to have those faster shutter speeds. So like I mentioned before, I normally try not to go below a 500th of a second on the shutter speed. You can go lower than that, particularly on like bigger, wider stuff, because obviously the players are further away, but close up, telephoto shots, try and keep it to a 500th of a second or above. And then in terms of aperture, that obviously means that you're going to want to use nice, fast lenses. By fast, I mean that the aperture goes down really low. So the minimum I try to use is f2.8 on lenses if I can. You can sometimes get away with f4 if the lighting's all right, but yeah, if you're shooting at night, you definitely want an f2.8 or below. So typically I would say, if I had to choose one camera ever and one lens ever and one film ever to go to a game with, probably be Portrait 800, just because, it's nice to have the color, on my Canon EOS 1V with my 70-200 f2.8. That kind of covers most bases. So that's a good starting point. But then, yeah, like I say, you can get higher ISO black and white films, and I love shooting black and white at sports, so I've always got Ilford Delta 3200 in my bag as well. This is a good one, and a question that gets asked a lot with film photography: how do I protect my film from airport scanners? This is something that a lot of people worry about because airport X-ray scanners can damage film if it goes through them. So one of the things I always try to do is just to get my film hand searched by the security officers. I'd say I get about a 50% success rate doing that because a lot of the time they're like, no, it's fine. You just can put it through the machines. One of the most common things you'll hear is that airport machines are safe up to 800 ISO, which is kind of true and it's kind of not. In fact, I'm going to link below a brilliant video by another great film photographer and creator called Lena Bessanova, who literally went through airports and tested every type of film multiple times to see what the results were. And from what I can tell, her conclusions were the older X-ray scanners tend to be okay on film 800 ISO and below. And if you go through them a couple of times, one on the way out, one on the way back, you're not really going to notice any damage. Which is good. Films above that, they'll start to get a little bit fogged if you go through them once or twice, but again, to the discerning eye, you're not going to see loads of difference. The only thing nowadays is that some of the more modern airports have started to use CT scanners, which are the ones where you don't have to take any of your stuff out of your bags, like laptops or anything, it all stays in your bag, and that's because the CT scanner is much more powerful and it scans through the entire thing. And with those, they do damage films, and it's pretty clear that they damage almost all films of any ISO. And in those situations, I always try and insist on a hand search. And actually, I found that most of the time the staff are trained there to know that the film's going to get damaged by the CT scanners, and they tend to be a little bit more receptive, which is good. You can do some stuff yourself to help the matter. I have something called a dom key bag. It's a lead-lined bag, and you can put all your film in it, and it does offer some protection when it goes through the scanners. So what I tend to do is shove the film in there before I get to the airport and say, can you hand search my film? When I get there, show them that I've got all this film. If they say yes, that's fantastic, they'll hand search it. If they say no, put it on the tray and let it go through the scanner in the bag. A lot of the time in that case though, the staff, because the x-rays can't penetrate it, will hand search it afterwards anyway, which is very stupid, but it does offer that little bit more protection. The other trick you can do with this as well is to make sure that you've got one roll of film with you that says 3200 ISO, because the staff are pretty much trained to know that 3200 ISO film will get damaged by scanners of any sort. So if you show them, you're like, oh, I've got this really sensitive film though, I can't put it through the scanner, then a lot of the time they'll be like, okay, that's fine, and they'll hand search that. Sometimes they'll only search the rolls at 3200 ISO, which is annoying, but then again, at least they're not going through and getting damaged. My overriding message with this though is that I have been through hundreds of airport scanners with film, and I've only ever noticed damage on film like once or twice. So most of the time, there's not a lot to worry about, is what I would say there. Atticus has asked me how many football jerseys do I own? Well, you can see behind me here, I've got quite a few. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I'd call that 11 possibly. And he also said my favorite United kit and my favorite non-United kit. Okay, let's have a look then. I would say my favorite United kit is the one that I got given by United when I helped them shoot their kit launch, and they printed my name on the back of it with 24 for the year. Obviously this is this season's shirt, but just the story behind this and the fact that I went to Old Trafford and they presented me with this was really exciting. So I'd say that's possibly my favourite shirt for that reason. Although I do have to say, I freaking love our third kit this year. How gorgeous is this? And I had to get it with Cobby on the back and in the long sleeves as well. So I love this shirt as well. But then, oh God, I also love this. This is an old 90s away kit, the black one with Cantona on the back. And so that's also possibly my favourite. But I think still this expired Film Club 24 shirt is my favourite United shirt. In terms of non-United shirts, I actually really like this one. This is a Zidane France 98 shirt, which I really love. It just looks great on in terms of like how it fits me and everything. So I'd say that's possibly my favourite shirt to wear. Love this Ronaldinho one though as well. This is really cool. And then I've got some other ones back here. I've got a Ronaldo Brazil shirt. I'm getting a bit obsessed, to be honest. I've also got another Ronaldo Barcelona shirt from the 90s, this Kappa one. Yeah, I've got quite a lot more arriving in the post over the next little while. So that collection behind me is going to be getting bigger and bigger as these videos go on. And I'm going to end with this one because I've been answering questions for a long time now and you're probably all very bored, so apologies. But somebody said, love your work. If you could shoot any sporting event in history, what would it be? I don't know whether this means, I guess this must mean in the past as well. Oh shit, I'm gonna have to think about this. I mean, as an England boy, the '66 World Cup final would have been pretty amazing. But I think as a United fan, the 98-99 Champions League final would have to have been it. If I could have been there on the touchline to get that photo of Ole Gunnar Solskjaer doing his knee slide on film, that would have made my life, I think. So I would say that. In terms of stuff that's coming up though, I'd love to shoot the World Cup final, possibly. Maybe the one in America in a couple of years. You know, just to be at the World Cup final for a start would be absolutely incredible. But to be there shooting it would be an absolute dream come true. So I say from the past, I'm going to go for the 98-99 Champions League final. The future, the World Cup final at any point. Okay, I haven't got to nearly as many questions as I wanted to. Thank you so much for asking me them on my Instagram. I'll do another one of these very soon, actually, so have a look out for that. If you want to follow me on socials, I'll leave all the links in the description as well, and I'll answer some more questions on there when I get the chance to as well. But I hope you've enjoyed this, guys. I hope you got to know me a bit better. I hope it's been useful. I mean, I've been waffling on for freaking ages, so hopefully you've been able to take some advice from how I get to do all my sporting bits. And if you want to follow the same sort of path, then I hope this has been helpful for you. Like I say, if you want to follow me on socials, I do a lot more of that stuff on there, and you can ask me questions as and when. It's no problem at all. If you've enjoyed this video, please leave a like, and if you have any more questions you'd like me to answer, please leave them in the comments, and I'll respond to anybody who's got any more questions that I didn't answer in this video. Please like and subscribe if you're new around here. I'm going to be posting some really exciting content coming soon, including the £1 AliExpress film, which I'm about to unbox right now. I'm very excited, so keep an eye out for that, and I'll see you for another video very soon indeed. Thanks for watching, everybody. See ya.